What's up, guys? Welcome to Awesome Comics, your one-stop shop for everything comic book entertainment. I am your host, Walter Bernasiak, and we got a big panel today, guys. This is a good one. We're talking about our favorite comic book writers and our favorite comic book artists. Before we get to the intros of these guys, I want to always remind you to like the Facebook page, facebook.com/awesomecomicshow. New videos every Thursday, so go ahead and like that page. Okay, intros. We'll start with my left, the far left. It's Heather Roos. What's going on, Heather?
Hello. Nothing much. Just really excited to share some of my favorite authors and artists with you guys.
Yeah, all right. Cool. Porter. Bryan Porter.
What's up?
What's going on, man?
How you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Are you doing good?
I'm good.
You sure?
Yeah.
Okay.
For sure.
Okay. And Aiyanna, Waid, how's it going?
What's up? Back again?
You excited to talk about your favorite writer and artist?
Oh, yeah.
All right, cool. And our special guest today, Mr. Trevor Mueller. What's up, man?
Not much, man. Thanks so much for having me on the show. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, okay. Well, we're going to get right into this, folks. Favorite writer we're going to go with first. Let's start with Trevor. Favorite writer, what's up, man?
New to the show and also opening us off.
Throw you right in there. Throw you right in there.
So, as somebody who, most of the people from Channel Awesome probably don't know that outside of Nostalgia Critic stuff, I also write comic books. So I'm going to hopefully bring a unique perspective to the idea here. But so I ended up picking a writer that I really kind of look up to and appreciate and have had the opportunity to work with in a business capacity before, who is Mark Waid. And so Mark is the kind of writer who has, a reverence for a lot of the characters that he works on, an understanding of who these characters are, has the versatility to work with a multitude of different artists, which comic book storytelling is all about, right? The writer and the artist working in conjunction to kind of give this visual narrative, so it makes a lot of sense. So Mark is just this fantastic guy, and one of the nicest people that you'll meet in comics. One of the things too that I really didn't get about Mark until I ended up reading the new Archie run, which, have you guys had a chance to read that at all yet?
Yeah, my students enjoy it.
So Archie, right? This is a character that's existed longer than I have, and I think it's safe to say that I'm the oldest person sitting at this table. And not a character that gets a lot of press, not a character that has a lot of interest, I feel, from younger readers. And I picked up this new Archie book with him and Fiona Staples kind of on the art duties. Love her work on Saga, right? And it's a complete redesign of the characters, and it's essentially like an episode of something on the CW, but in comic book form, and it's fascinating. And from the word go, like, it's Archie narrating to you like Zach Morris from Saved by the Bell, and just sitting there just like, time out, let me tell you what's going on here, right? And it's the classic Betty Veronica like fight over Archie, but the twist is that he's already been in a relationship with one of them, and it failed because of something called the lipstick incident, right? And from the word go, you're just intrigued and hooked into this world that he starts to craft in this modern telling of Riverdale. So absolutely fantastic. Kingdom Come, obviously, a very famous book from DC Comics. I'm sure you guys have all read this.
Yeah. Yes.
Yes?
Love
No?
Kingdom Come.
All right, good. So very, very different narrative, though, right? And the diversity in narrative and voice that Mark Waid can kind of put out there through the different artists that he works on or the different characters that he's working on. And this was an opportunity to kind of reimagine a lot of these characters as older characters within the universe. So absolutely loved what he did with this world and this universe. Alex Ross, obviously, gorgeous painted artwork on here, a lot of religious overtones that he's kind of thrown in there, because it really kind of is about the end of innocence and the end of mankind as we know it. And again, these are just three examples that I kind of brought from my collection, because the stipulation that Walter sent through in the email was something you have an example of, and most of my comics are still back in Michigan. But Superman Birthright, right, is kind of the final example that I brought on here. And people may or may not know that Man of Steel borrowed very heavily from a lot of the source material that was in Superman Birthright, which was not unlike Archie. Mark being asked by DC Comics to kind of reimagine the Superman character for a modern generation. And he created the line that it's not an S on my chest, right? This, from where I'm from, this is the symbol of hope. Right. The difference being is that he actually put Superman in situations where he is inspiring hope versus Man of Steel, which is another conversation entirely.
Yeah.
So again, just a versatility that you don't see in a lot of writers that are out there, an understanding of the medium that exists, and a diversity of voice while maintaining a reverence for the characters, to me, really kind of stood out. So that's why he's my favorite.
Gotcha. I love Kingdom Come, so I know where I come from on that.
Yeah.
Let's go on. Favorite writer, Heather.
Hey, all right. Transitions well because we have the same artist for Archie
Oh.
and Saga. But one of my favorite writers is Bryan Kavan. So I just really like some of the creativity that he has. I think he is a very engaging storyteller. I think he writes really relatable characters who I'm generally drawn into. I like that he adds a sense of humor every now and then. So even though it could be a serious topic like Pride of Baghdad, there is the occasional humor so that it's not just all the issues punching you in the face. Like, there's humor injected into it. And I also find his characters relatable when they're, not demigods, I suppose. But
well, he creates a humanity and an
Yes.
ability for the character to resonate with the reader. And he's
Right.
done that in all the projects that he's worked on.
right, I always feel connected to whoever the characters are, which is always something that I value. I want to be able to connect to the characters and really engage in their story, because that's what keeps me engaged. So some of the examples that I brought, I meant to bring Why the Last Man, but when I
Throw up a picture. Boom.
Well, yeah, right. When I moved to Japan, I donated like 70% of my comic collection to the school I used to work at. So it's at that school right now. But
Donate
that's
your
a
old comic.
great one. If you haven't checked out Why the Last Man, it's a great one to just toss people into too. If they're a first-time comic reader, a lot of people will read that very voraciously, I guess.
That conversation you and I were having
Right.
before the show, that was the first comic book series I ever introduced my wife to. She knew who Superman was. She didn't want to pick up an issue and have to have had 30 years worth of history in order to
Yeah.
read today's issue. But so I gave her Why the Last Man, and again, the exact same reasons, right? She loved it, resonated with her, like it was a fantastic story. Yeah.
Yeah. And I also have a set of Runaways, but my kids are super into it right now. So
Yes.
they're all checked out in my library. So there's that. There's also Saga, which honestly, if you have not checked out Saga yet, you really should. It's probably one of the most talked about comic books recently, not just because of the controversy of the cover, but it's also just a fantastic story. Same thing with Pride of Baghdad came out. Oh my gosh, I can't even think. What, 2003? Maybe? Something around there.
Been a while.
It has been a while. But it is just a great story that touches on some of the issues happening in Baghdad with the bombings that we do in Iraq, the U.S. does. But it's, again, told in a great way where you don't feel, like I said, punched in the face with the issues. It's a great way to tackle it while still having humanity, despite the fact that it's told from lions, from the perspective of the lions. So,
Lion King. Hello.
right,
we
yeah.
go.
So there we go. It's Bryan Kavan. Check out his stuff.
Yeah, great. All right, we'll go over to Aiyanna. Who's your favorite writer?
What's up? Brian Lee O'Malley, if you can't tell. He's great. This is one of those comics that made me feel like it was cool to like comics because it was sort of in when it was coming out. So I didn't have to like suppress that as much. I remember going to the sixth book release dressed as Ramona Flowers, actually. Because that was back in my blue hair days when I used to dye it a crazy color every week. So obviously when I read it, I was like, what? This is an amazing character. Let me read more. He won like the 2015 Joe Shuster Award for Outstanding Canadian Comic Book Cartoonist as a writer and artist. One of the good ones to read for his is Lost at Sea. This is one of his beginning ones at Oni Press. And it's sort of like this existential, like, aimlessness to it. Talks about, like, depression and breakups and goes through, like, her divorce, her parents' divorce, not hers. And she has to take this road trip home with these acquaintances she knew from, like, high school. And dealing with possibly not having a soul, but feeling like she's just like walking around without a soul, this emptiness. There's just a really great relatability of having to be around people that you don't necessarily want to be around during like a really like big moment of vulnerability that I really like about this. And there's some other smaller Lost at Sea like continuation comics out there online. You can look them up, I'm sure. There's also Seconds, which is Katie's like a restaurant owner. That one I don't own, apparently. But it's a little more fast-paced and has more exposition than I'm used to in his stuff. He sort of like throws you in usually. That one kind of gives you an introduction to her life. But I would say he's best known for Scott Pilgrim, obviously, which won the 2010 Harvey and Eisner Award for Best Humor Publication. I mean, it's a video game-ish type of world. There's superpowers, there's music. I like there's one of the beginning comics, it might be issue 1 actually, when they're like making a recipe and it's like cook along with Scott Pilgrim and his friends, how to make a vegan shepherd's pie. Because if you're vegan, you have superpowers in this world. It's amazing. And it's very reminiscent of like failed high school romances and bad breakups. Not that I can relate to that at all. Right?
No.
But I just remember going nuts for Ramona as a character, and all the other characters are just so unique and quirky and just unapologetically quirky and their own selves, but still grounded in like reality, even if they're dealing with things like magic mushrooms or like having to defeat evil exes or like your soul being stuck in a cat, stuff like that. You know, just like normal stuff that people go through. So even if they're in like a world with eccentricities to it, they're still like cool characters, but they're still grounded in reality. And he has a new graphic novel coming out. He announced it at SDCC, Worst World. So we're gonna see what that's about, and I'm very excited.
Great. I really like the Scott Pilgrim movie too. So I mean, I know not a lot of
stayed
people
very
saw it,
true to the source material, which does not usually happen. And it completely took its own spin. Like the ending is completely different, and there's a lot of different
book wasn't out
things.
yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's very like it's different, but it really gave that true essence of what it was to like read Scott Pilgrim.
It was a fun movie.
Yeah.
I really liked it.
The casting was amazing.
Reverence.
Right.
Porter, favorite writer, man.
All right, we all know, like, you saw in the Facebook video, I love Jeff Johns. Everybody knows I love Scott Snyder. But one of my favorite writers that I only got to read a very small portion was Joss Whedon. He did the Astonishing X-Men run, like 24 issues and then like a giant size. It is amazing. Joss Whedon is one of my favorite directors of all time, and he's such a good writer. He, Buffy, Angel, Dollhouse. He can write all of these characters. Serenity, Firefly. He can write all of these characters with like big teams, and everybody has a very specific personality. And he doesn't skimp on anybody. Everybody is fully fleshed out, and they've a completely relatable, for the most part, relatable personality. And you can find yourself in something of every one of these characters. And him tackling the X-Men is perfect because of how different these characters are, but they're all together because they're mutants. And his level of snark and humor is awesome with a lot of these characters, but he can write like big thematic events. And like the main thing in here, especially the first trade, they're talking about a potential mutant cure and how all the mutants deal with that, and that's a big thing. Can I be human? And how they deal with it, and he captures these characters so well, and they can have these big moments, and then he'll just throw in a Joss Whedon line that you just if you didn't know like how much of this like Whedon wrote or whatever, and you hear this line, it's like that's a Joss Whedon line.
There it is.
But it doesn't take away from the story. It adds a bit of brevity, but it just enhances the story even more and makes it more relatable to the characters. And it's just so good. One of my favorite characters in Astonishing X-Men is actually Kitty Pryde, which almost completely, like, she's like pretty much the center of the story overall. And she's such a good character.
100% agree.
I love her character, and it's amazing. And he captures everybody a lot. But I think he really captured Kitty Pryde, and especially in. Well, I have all 4 trades. I got a friend of mine who's borrowing, but whenever I read the trades, I read them all 4 of them in one go. I just sit down and read them all. The last few pages of the last trade, man, it gives me goosebumps. The first time I read it, I cried. The second time I read it, I cried. Like there's so much weight to these characters, and you love them so much in just 24 issues. And I wish that he wrote more comic books. I would read anything that he wrote, regardless of the art style, regardless of what it was about. If it was a kid's comic book, I'd be at every Wednesday. You know, I love everything that Whedon does, and I've never been disappointed ever.
Well, we do need a world with more Portermantiers, so.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, all the Portermantiers. That's what I'm drinking right now, actually. I recommend it. I eat it with cereal.
That's not
Photoshop
disgusting
it, internet.
at all. But yeah, I love Whedon. He's so good.
So we're going to go to favorite artist now. Trevor, who's your favorite artist?
Yeah, so a little different for me because my favorite artists are the ones that I work with, but I don't want to be self-aggrandizing by any measure. So instead, I kind of twisted your question a little bit to be like an artist that I'm very intrigued by and I'm kind of watching their career. And so for me, that's an artist named Tradd Moore, who fans will probably know more famously from the run that he did on Marvel's Ghost Rider, but I know him from the Luther Strode books that my buddy Justin Jordan writes. And yes, this is a very hyper-violent book, as you can probably tell from the cover. You know, but it's essentially the thing that I love about him the most is the way that he kind of flows from panel to panel, page to page, action to action. And again, narrative flow is very visual within comics, so it's very important to be able to capture that. And this is a very action-heavy series, and he has actions that he'll put in there that'll just flow your eye very organically through the rest of the page, through the actions that are happening. It's almost like watching a kung fu fight scene in many ways. So I absolutely love what Tradd's been doing with this series, which has now ended in the third trade, as well as some of the stuff that he's been doing for Marvel. So I'm keeping a very close eye on what he's going to be working on next.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to that.
Yeah.
All right. Heather.
Yeah, so one of my favorite comic book artists is Adam Hughes. That's why I've got the Zatanna DC Women of DC Universe bust over here. I just really love the way that he treats women in his art. In general, I love his like compositions. Even like I feel like it's very realistic, which I like and value. And I also just really appreciate that a lot of his stuff, even though it's kind of pin-up-y, still has that old feel of their personalities shine through. It's not just about the like sexy cute pose that Catwoman is doing. It's about, there's a story in there. Like you can look at something even like this bust and see that there's a story here. You know, she's reaching, can't find the rabbit or whatever she's looking for. So I love the personality that he puts in every picture, I guess, that he illustrates here. One of the things that made me fall in love with him, one of the first illustrations that I saw where I was like, oh my gosh, I love this guy, is this one where it's the women of the DC universe all together. So I brought the sketchbooks. But
goddesses,
yeah, they're all Greek
Roman,
goddesses. But again, it makes the point where like they're not even in their costumes, but you can tell exactly who is who. Not because of any facial features, because even some of their hair is different than it usually is, but just the way that they're posed, you can tell, oh, that's totally Wonder Woman or Catwoman or whatever. So I love the personality that he puts in all the women in the DC universe there. And he's currently doing some of the covers for Betty and Veronica, and they're adorable. Adorable. I love it.
All right. Aiyanna, who is your favorite artist?
David Mack. That's what's up. Some of you might know him from the Winter Soldier credit sequence. That was bomb.
That was awesome.
He did that. Or Fight Club 2, I know people have been talking about a lot. He does the cover art for that. But he does more than just watercolor. Watercolor is what I love him for, because there's some breathtaking ones in Alias specifically, or Daredevil too. But he does more than just watercolor and pen and ink. He does magazine clippings and color scans and crayons and thread and lace, and he's a collagist, and it's amazing work. He has his own series that he wrote, Kabuki, which is actually, if you have the Comixology app, I believe Volume 1 is free on Unlimited right now. So go check that out. And it was his senior thesis in college, was Volume 1. That's what he turned in for his thesis. So it's black and white. and it's set in Japan in the future, and it's like an assassin's named Kabuki, and it's awesome. It's a bunch of like assassins in the future. It's very violent, just as a warning, but it's in black and white, so like the blood is like artistically done and stuff. There is one of the later volumes is in full color though. So, but he'll use like sandalwood fans as like panel borders, or like turn like the barbed wire like into burbs, like MC Escher style, and then or like someone will raise a sickle and then it'll turn into like the crescent moon. Just some of the images that he evokes in that series is really cool. And Alias specifically is what I love him for, is his cover work for that. And it's very like femme noir is what Bendis calls it. And he'll use he made like a whole journal for this character in it that this girl gets lost and runs away or something. We don't know what happens to her, and he makes an entire like dream journal for her. This entire thing he just makes up for her, and it's amazing. And it's based off of one of his like ex-girlfriends from college and stuff. He co-created Echo. I cheated. I chose like 2 writer and artist for mine, so I got like double out of it. But but yeah, so
It's a fundamental understanding of the medium
Exactly.
that they end up bringing in there. So, and David and I have exhibited at shows a lot with each other and stuff. He's also one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet in comics.
I'm glad we got you here, Trevor. Porter, favorite artist?
Mine is a little bit more well known. It's Jim Lee, and I love Jim Lee's art so much. I think he captures. You see him a lot in DC now, and he does a lot of Batman. He'll do he did Superman Unchained, which was phenomenal. It was written by Scott Snyder, and it was such a good run. But he captured Superman, and he gets the feel of Superman with the way he draws his costume. I think I really like Jim Lee's Superman costume. It's crisp, it's clean, but it feels very Superman. And I love the way he draws Batman specifically. I think the way he uses his shadows with Batman fits like the whole Batman persona. Life in the Shadows, Dark Knight. But I think he shadows him well. And it just really draws out that character. And he pops on every page, even if he's in the dark. And I just love the way it looks. His lines are so like good and clean. It looks great. But then he busts out like this crazy ass Joker here that it's insane. It's not your normal style Joker, but it still looks awesome. And he gets these characters really well, but he brings something fresh to them. And I love, they're realistic, but they're also their own. It's their own style. Like
Right.
I don't see anybody that draws Batman and Superman together like this that just flows like it does in these pages. And Batman Hush is one of my favorite books of all time, and his entire run on the story is just beautiful. He does beautiful artwork, and I love it. I just love it so much.
All right. Well, I hope you guys enjoyed talking about our favorite writer and artist. We're gonna pick of the week. I was gonna say is all of this stuff. So all this stuff that we've mentioned, go and check it out because it's great work.
You have a lot of homework to do, guys.
Yeah, a lot of
There's
homework.
a
a lot of reading to
There's a
do.
lot, sorry.
Social media for everyone. Heather, where can we find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Heather Roos or Instagram at HRoos.
And Porter, how about you?
Facebook.com/awesomeporter.
Okay. Aiyanna.
Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat now. Good. Here, fighting crime in the alleys at night.
Yeah, the basics.
know.
Trevor, what do you got going on? Anything coming out recently, or what's up?
Yeah, so we continue to work on my Albert the Alien series,
Okay.
which is a webcomic that updates for free every Wednesday and Friday at albertthealien.com. It's a young reader's sci-fi series about the first foreign exchange student from outer space. I love my artist, so check that out. It's totally free, and then we'll be Kickstart funding the 3rd graphic novel in that series probably early next year.
Great.
And then you can find me online as well at Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. Trevor A. Mueller is all of those things. So find me, follow me, friend me, and let's talk comics.
Great.
Awesome.
I hope you've enjoyed watching us talk comics. Next week, in preparation for the season 3 premiere of The Flash, we will be reviewing Justice League: The Flashpoint Paradox animated movie. So come back for that. You could also follow me on Twitter at awesome_Walter. Talk to me about top 5 show I do, this show, whatever. I'm there for you. all the time. Okay, so until next week, for these guys, they're fantastic people. I'm Walter Bernasiak, and we will see you on the next page.